APWA is delighted to bring you such knowledge and experience. We are going to start the program with each of the panelists giving a brief overview of how they are involved with the waste-to-resource technology. Mark Spafford, would you like to go first? Mark, are you there? You might be muted.
Of course I'm muted, Matt. So let me it's too early here. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm still waking up. So anyway, so I've been the department head here for about 4 years. We've had a landfill gas to energy plant, which we collect methane at the landfill and we sell to a local utility provider who turns that into electricity. We've had that since 2013. When I got here, the department really didn't have any other recycling programs or offer any services like that other than just curbside commingled. Since then, we've developed an organics collection program. We've developed a commercial glass recycling program. We've developed a residential glass recycling program. We're working on developing a local composting operation at the landfill. We're piloting that, and so we've developed a lot of the different services that our customers have had been asking for a long time. And of course, one of the other cool things that we do is we take all the data that we're collecting as far as recycling is concerned, and we incorporate that into the dashboards that we have that are available electronically on our website that tell us how much landfill life we have remaining. And we use all of that recycling data that we're collecting as well as the actual usage of the landfill, like how much waste is going into it, to develop what I like to call the doomsday clock, which is a real-time basically countdown of how much landfill life we have left remaining. And so it's pretty cool, and that's kind of a brief overview of how I'm involved with waste to resources technology.
Mark Rogoff. I'm sorry, Mark Spafford. Thank you. Mark Rogoff, would you like to go next?
Sure. Welcome all. I'm a bit of public agency manager in Florida. That's where I started in my career. I've been a private consultant for the past 30 some odd years. I started in the waste to energy industry, helping my county, which is Hillsborough County, which is in the west coast of Florida, implement a mass burn project in the mid-1980s. And since that time, I've been involved in something like 13 different implementation efforts of waste to energy projects around the United States. I've also done probably 40 different studies looking at the potential feasibility of other type of waste conversion, waste diversion technologies. And so how I fit in here is last year, Mark and I worked on a feasibility study for the municipality of Anchorage, and we looked at the feasibility and we looked at the implementation, and we're currently kind of on hold waiting for the municipal authority to move forward on that project. I've also written 3 books on waste to energy, so find me on Amazon.
Yeah, we'll be sure to do that. Thank you, Mark Rogoff. Mark Bernstein, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for having me here today. I appreciate it. And I'm the third Mark, and the chance of 3 Marks on one panel is pretty slim, but here we are. I'm the chair of the Walton Sustainability Solutions Service at Arizona State University. And we are a knowledge partner and consultant to companies and governments on helping achieve sustainability outcomes. We've worked with a number of municipalities over the years, particularly including the city of Phoenix, who's been a good partner with us for the last 6 years, and bringing them to be one of the smartest and most innovative public works departments, trying new things, taking some risks, increasing diversion rates substantially, creating new jobs, and being cost effective. And our approach is the fact that we have hundreds of faculty who do work in these areas, and we have a knowledge base and an understanding of the opportunities that can be flexible, and we're looking at changing the game and thinking through how we achieve success in reusing and remaking resources as we move to the future.
Mark Bernstein, thank you. Veronica, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. And I am not a Mark. My name is Veronica Ruth, and I am a Senior Environmental Policy Specialist at Burns & McDonnell. I have led planning studies and developed reduction and recycling strategies and programs on behalf of states, locals, and regional agencies, and even military installations, as well as other institutions such as universities and corporations nationwide. I have worked side by side with each of those and including communities from coast to coast. Right now, I'm working in Washington and also have some projects on the East Coast in Georgia. So keeps me busy. I am helping them evaluate and implement recycling and diversion programs tailored to their needs. They can range from curbside recycling, electronics recycling, yard waste and brush recycling, organics processing, and much, much more. As we will hear today, we understand that everyone is at a different point in the process to achieving their recycling and diversion goals, and I've had the opportunity to work with those that are at the start, in the middle, and further along as well. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Georgia and a member of the Environmental Law Section and Local Government Section of the State Bar of Georgia. And I also currently serve as the director for the Solid Waste Association of North America, SWANA. I serve as their director of the Communication, Education, and Marketing Technical Division. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, thanks for joining us, Veronica, and thank you to the rest of our panelists. We'll officially get things kicked off today for our program by asking a first question to our panel, and more specifically to Mark Rogoff. Mark, what are some risk and implementation issues that local governments should consider in evaluating waste-to-energy technology?
Well, there's a whole series of technical issues, economic issues, institutional issues that are all part of the equation. One of the things we did for Anchorage, just as an example, is we looked at all the different technologies that are out there. We kind of ranked them based on what the state of the technology was, what kind of technical performance they've shown, are they compatible with the whole spectrum of what the city's waste system was, and then looked at some of the technical resources that are available. In any one of these technologies, are there people that are trained to work on them? What's the proximity of the support, and what's the availability to support, let's say, a facility that would be implemented on a continuing basis? So there's a whole series of different issues that are part of that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And we have another question specifically for you, Mark. Where are some flagship projects where I could visit and take one or more of my decision makers to, quote, kick the tires?
Well, we kind of did that particular thing. Mark and I actually, I arranged a series of tours of active and operating waste-to-energy facilities in Florida. And Florida implemented 10 waste-to-energy facilities back in the 80s and 90s, and there's lots of reasons, lots of support from the state government, but also the whole issue of being able to site a greenfield landfill was pretty difficult. So a lot of municipalities went with waste to energy. So we viewed a number of active operating facilities, interviewed the folks that are monitoring the performance, not only from the municipality or the county side, but also from the vendor side. So I think we got a lot of input. So there are a lot of active landfills of waste energy facilities in the United States, 76 across the United States and roughly around 30 different states. So there are a lot of other places that you can go and visit some of these active technologies. Kick the tires.
Very good, thank you. Veronica, did you have something to add to the Mark's comments?
Yes, thank you. As part of due diligence, it is critical to kick the tires at sites with the technology in place, as Mark suggested. But in selecting those sites, we recommend to consider the composition of the material that's going into that site, as well as the quantity of the material that's being managed at that site, and other factors to make sure that that site will be a long-term fit for your community. Burns McDonnell, we were assisting a local government in Texas to implement a state-of-the-art MRF, a materials recovery facility, to manage their single-stream recyclables. And in doing so, we went and visited some of the proposers' sites, took us even out of the country to visit some of those sites to make sure that what those facilities were managing at those locations could be put into place in the community here in this Texas location and be a good fit for long-term partnership. Because with any of these facilities, it is a long-term partnership and it is a multi-million, multi-year partnership, and we want to make sure it's successful. So we highly recommend to go kick those tires.
Very good, thank you. And Veronica, we have a question here that is for you. What technology changes are being implemented at a material recovery facilities and within recycling programs to improve quality to meet market specifications?
Thank you, Matt. First, we want to acknowledge that there are some communities in the United States that have transitioned from single stream to dual stream, or even looked at the type of materials that they are accepting via their recycling program. This may be looking to excluding some materials such as glass and plastics 3 through 7s as a means to improve the quality to meet market specifications in that area. But for those and majority of communities that we are working with, and majority of communities in the United States, they are electing to maintain their programs and requiring processors and customers to improve the quality to meet market specifications. So how are they doing this with technology? We are seeing more advanced technologies at the materials recovery facilities, at the MRFs. Artificial intelligence is increasingly being integrated into daily operations at these facilities to bolster the quality of recovery materials. For a while, we have seen magnets and other technologies at MRFs. But today we are seeing MRFs looking to investing into artificial vision, as well as optical and gravimetric separation machines and other AI machines to complement manual labor. I don't think we're ever going to be away from manual labor, at least not in the short term, but we are increasingly seeing technologies such as artificial intelligence complementing manual labor as a means to increase the quality of recyclables coming out of our MRFs to meet market specifications. And another benefit of these technologies, the investment in these technologies, is the safety of our staff.
That's a good point, Veronica. Thank you. I encourage the audience to type in any questions you might have for our panelists in the chat pod that you see on your WebEx screen there. Mark Bernstein, we have another question, and it's for you. How does micro manufacturing work, and what interesting technologies have you seen?
Thanks, Matt. So micro manufacturing is kind of a new thing about, taking this big stuff we've built and making it small again. Economies of scale have eroded a bit in these cases. And as we saw what happened with China's ban, is that it created an opportunity for innovators to show up, create some new ideas, new concepts. And if we think about how we're going to take waste and turn it into resource, whether that resource is energy or textile fibers or PET pellets, those are all resources, is how can we do it in a way that's much more local and distributed, creating jobs and economic activities. And we've seen a number of technologies emerge. We have accelerated a few. a small company that is taking heavier plastics, turning into oils, cost effectively, doing even mobile waste to resource. There's a company that's doing a textile recycling out of the back of a semi-trailer, right? And you load stuff in and you come out with textile parts. So the whole concept around, how do we move and how do we deal with resource and waste is changing. And we need to change it with the times today.
Okay, thank you. Mark, Veronica, we have another question for you. How can you use a regional approach to improve the cost effectiveness of implementing technology in your recycling programs?
Yes, especially with the budget evaluations that we're seeing going on today, we're increasingly seeing the communities look to how can we team with others in the region to improve the cost effectiveness of implementing technologies in our recycling programs. And recently we have evaluated these opportunities to expand solid waste and recycling services via regional collaborations, one from the MRF processing side and another from the education and outreach side, both taking into account technologies. So from the MRF processing side, for communities in a region in Arizona, we sought to collaborate within the region to procure recycling processing services. And the thought there was one community could generate X tonnage, but collectively bringing all their tonnage together, the hope was to decrease the cost of processing for the communities overall. The strategy took into account the investment that a MRF needs to make into technologies, and by having more tonnage going to that facility, they could distribute those costs amongst those tons, providing a lower processing fee to those communities when these services are procured on a regional basis. Another approach from a regional basis was it was a planning study that we recently completed for a community in Texas. We sought to collaborate within the region to incentivize the construction of a MRF, a materials recycling facility. And our thought process there was this one community, they had a very successful recycling program, but others in the region did not have a recycling program but wanted one. But the cost was prohibited. So their thoughts was if there was a local MRF that would decrease the cost of processing, that would decrease the cost of the collection program because lower transportation fees, the facility we located closer, and it would incentivize a private party to invest in the construction of a MRF there in the area. So the hope there is the regional approach would not only help increase the recycling in the region, but also bring jobs to the region. From the education side, we just had the opportunity to work with the Recycling Partnership for a region in Texas to develop a regional education and outreach campaign. The thoughts behind that, and I've seen this occur in other areas. I worked for an institution here in the Metro Atlanta area, and we had a summit to take a regional approach from an education side. And the thought is we want a consistent education message, not only where you live, but where you work and where you visit, those restaurants and other areas you visit in the same community, so you know how to recycle right. So from a recycling campaign and the technologies that are available, we're seeing the increased usage of apps and texting and media, so social media. So we are increasingly seeing those used and effectively used to communicate when you can and where you can recycle and how to properly recycle as a means to increase the quality and hopefully decrease the costs of recycling programs in the United States.
Great, thank you, Veronica. Mark Bernstein, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to support what Veronica just said. The concept around regional cooperation is really important. In addition to the benefits that Veronica talked about, it shares the risk. So if you're going to do new technologies, you're going to take a little bit of innovation in there, sharing the risk across different municipalities really helps. If one city says, I'm going to try something brand new, you know, they're the only one taking the risk when something goes wrong, you know, they take the blame, right? So, you know, the ability for some of this the more distributed approach works better when municipalities and companies can work together. And you think about the commercial properties who are often not part of in the waste stream, they can participate as well. And then also, given from an academic institution, the education piece is, yes, really critical, not only for people, but for companies and corporations. And how do we get everybody engaged and involved in these things? We've done a number of those things around learning and advanced learning and really thinking about how do you put these things into practice. And I'm hoping that some of the outcome from the current stay at home is that people are thinking about how much they use and how much they throw away, particularly food. And if people are worried about getting food, maybe they're wasting less food, right? Because they're looking, okay, I need to go to the store and buy, but maybe I'll make sure that I've used everything I had. And that actually can help our waste stream because we may be getting less organic waste into the stream and therefore help the overall process. And that's an education process that I'm really supportive of.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Mark Bernstein, thank you. We have a question from Craig Murray to you, Mark Bernstein. And the question is, what are emerging technologies for RNG production from waste for CHP, transportation fuel, and pipeline injection?
That is a very specific question. You know, we've seen a whole bunch of people come forward, particularly with organic waste and both anaerobic digestion and other digestive things to create gas. And you know, renewable gas is important for moving forward. And we know that the gas companies themselves know how to do that. Gas companies already sort of upgrade gas, take gas from different ways, and inject it into the system. Those technologies are there. They know already how to do that. SoCal Gas already has these tanker trucks that they can go one place, fill up with some gas, and go and inject it into the system. They do that for emergencies now, but they can deploy that into renewable gas situations. So if you've got if you're using organic waste to make gas, and you're not close to the pipeline, you can just throw it into a tanker truck and get it into the system. So those are there. The economics is the problem at the moment, right? And so it's natural gas is cheap, and you know, can we make it economic? That's going to be the issue. We've seen a few kind of really interesting technologies lately that look like they can scale at a point where you can actually create both a cost-effective compost fertilizer outcome as well as a gas. And the gas companies, particularly in the Southwest, all want to find renewable gas opportunities, and they're willing to create the technologies. So they're out there. They haven't applied it in this case, but they're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I have a next question there that has come in from Tom Beggs to our chat panel, and keep these questions coming in. These are great questions. This one goes out to all the panelists. What materials that solid waste facilities generate are in high demand? Which materials are the hardest to sell?
Well, I think in Anchorage's case, you know, fiber, I think right now is obviously the biggest commodity or of the most value to the local recycling center. And frankly, the least value, you know, is the commingled that we're providing to that facility. You know, just because of the well, we're in a little bit different situation up here. You know, we're on an island and all of our materials have to be, you know, basically put on a barge and shipped down to a MRF in the Northwest region in order to recycle anything. But as much I think the cardboard and the fiber has gone up just because of the amount of, material that's being generated and people are recycling just because of the whole, pandemic, and people are doing more, at-home shopping and stuff like that. So, but that's Anchorage's perspective.
Thanks, Mark. Veronica, did you have something to add?
Yes, I would agree with Mark that generally fiber is the material that we're seeing the most demand for and the higher values for. As to the other materials, it does vary from region to region. Here in Georgia, we do have a good market for glass, which I know in other areas that there is not as strong of a market for glass. So it is regional as to the other materials, and it's also dependent on the quality. So that's why the investment in technologies and the investment in education and outreach are critical, because the demand for the materials that are coming from your community is not only as to local markets and end markets overall, but also the quality of the material that's coming from your community. And then another note to mention is that in working with some facilities, if they do have the capability, they are storing materials in hopes that there are more demand as we get to a new normal. So that's another opportunity to try to get a higher value for the materials that you're recovering.
Okay, great, thank you. Mark Bernstein, we have a question that is specifically for you. And this kind of goes along with some points that were just made by Veronica and Mark in regards to the pandemic. As we emerge from this crisis, how can recycling or the circular economy help us to emerge more rapidly, and how can they create more jobs?
Thanks. Great question. And the events over the past few weeks make this even more critical. What we know from all the studies is that recycling creates more jobs than landfill, significantly amount more jobs. As well as if you begin to create these local opportunities for entrepreneurs to step up to the plate to do waste to other alternatives, you can create these micro-manufacturing elements in underserved communities. And so we can begin to build an economic engine in these regions that are taking the waste, repurposing them in the region for reuse in the region. So the opportunity to create jobs are significant. We're currently doing a number of estimates on that. We see be able to spur jobs, create new businesses around, they're not high tech. We're not talking about sort of fancy small little things. You can actually have semi-low tech micro-manufacturing opportunities where you can shred and use 3D printers from plastics, where you can, as I said, the company took the textiles and turned it into new fibers. You can do the same thing with cardboard. And it's really rethinking the model, and we've seen a lot of these technologies emerging. They're there. Communities are willing to take them. It's going to need some investment, and it's going to need some innovation among communities to rethink this. But it's the opportunity to create jobs. We know there are more jobs with recycling, so let's push it. In certain regions, back to what Veronica said, we've actually seen robust plastic recycling prices for recycled PET. It depends on the region you're in. And it fundamentally need to rethink how we're approaching this problem. And we can start creating jobs tomorrow, particularly in underserved neighborhoods and communities.
Mark Bernstein, thank you. Mark Rogoff, did you have something to add?
Yes, I have a number of clients that with waste energy plants that are generating power, and as you know, the whole market for energy has declined in the United States. The cost that these communities are getting for the power generated by their plants. So quite a number of them are looking at developing what they call a microgrid, and that is generating the power from the plant and using it at facilities that are nearby. One client here in Hillsborough County is utilizing the the energy from the electricity from the plant to run a wastewater treatment plant, and about 7 different other facilities on the campus. So they have diverted some of their energy that normally would be sent to the electric utility, and they're using it internally on the site. Another client a little bit north of me, they're utilizing some of the power from the waste energy plant to run a sludge drying facility. So they're actually co-composting sludge, and then they're drying it utilizing the energy from the waste to energy plant. So there's alternatives when the markets are potentially down.
Very good. Thank you, Mark Rogoff. Veronica and Mark Spafford, we had a late follow-up question to the value question that was asked a few minutes ago. And that question is mixed plastics still low value? Mark Spafford, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I can't remember the specific values for that, but I know that in Anchorage's case, that the plastics are basically what degrade the value of the the commingled material that we're bringing to the recycling center, as well as just what's being recycled and single stream separated anyway. And so again, I'm not sure what the exact cost is. I do know, however, for sure in the commingled stream that's what drives the cost down, and we actually pay more per ton to recycle than we do to landfill it. But just because we don't want people up here to lose their mind, if we started dumping everything that they were recycling into the landfill, we're willing to take a little bit of a basically subsidize it to a certain degree in order to make sure that it's being diverted from the landfill, because of course there's value to that as well.
Thank you, Mark. Veronica, do you have anything to add?
Yes. So generally, mixed plastics do have a lower value than if PET or HDPE is source separated or separated at the MRF. We do have indices that you can track, and they're specific by region, which I will share with Matt to share with the attendees here so that you can track those for yourself and specific to your region.
Thank you, Mark and Veronica. Mark Spafford, we have another question that has come in. It's specifically for you. How did you set up and measure the success of your organics collection program?
We set it up basically just by taking little baby pilot steps. So the first year I was here, we started with basically a food waste and organics drop-off program at our transfers. I was actually just at our landfill, and we basically had a pile of compost that was finished compost that we got from a local vendor. That it was kind of like people drop off a bucket of food scraps, yard waste, or whatever, and they can take a bucket of compost home. The second year that we did that, we expanded it to the transfer station and the landfill. The third year that we did it, and this is just because the popularity of it was growing so much, and there was, when we do our customer surveys, people were asking for more ways to get compost or divert, food scraps and yard waste from their, from the solid waste that they were generating. And so after that point, the success for those first 2 years, we basically did a curbside pilot collection program, and we found one neighborhood that had a lot of yard space, gave them all pink carts that's kind of what we branded our organics program with, is our pink recycling carts. And this last year, or the year before that, sorry, we were able to expand it to our entire collection area. And so I think a lot of it, it's popular because people know that that's the right thing to do. They pay a small fee for it. So for instance, I think, for a 32-gallon cart, they pay like $5 a month. For a 96-gallon, they pay $10 a month for the cart. And I don't think it's a savings for a lot of people. I think people just like to feel good about it, and they want to do it. And they know that they're making an impact on the environment and stuff like that. And it's just a service that people wanted that we just started providing for them. And so I think that's how it got kicked off, and that's how we got started. Now, we don't have anything local as far as developing compost. We still have to take it to another entity, but we're evaluating whether or not it would be cost effective for us right now at some point down the road to be able to, turn those organics that we're collecting into compost on our own.
Great. Thank you, Mark. We have another question here, and this one is specifically for Veronica. What are key factors with evaluating feasibility of organics and other diversion programs in your community?
So I'm sure Mark Bernstein will have some to add with his experience on the organic side, but from my experience on the organic side, the first step is really looking at the composition of the materials. How much food scraps versus yard trimmings do you have that is available to put into this program, and understanding the market that you intend to target. We have worked with some communities that their initial market is to target those grocery stores or those cafeterias that you can do it back of house versus front of house, and down the road looking to a residential curbside program such as is in Anchorage. Other things to consider are regulatory considerations. Is there a goal that you're trying to achieve? The market demand and availability of the market demand, is there an interest from the customers, as well as is there availability as to processing that material? We always have to consider the cost and revenue, so the cost to provide this service as well as the potential revenues for compost. We know some communities that can develop a compost product that could be a source of revenues, and others that are providing it to the community at no charge. Also, the capital investment, what type of organic processing do you intend? Windrows versus other forms of processing, there's a different level of capital investment that is required. The impact to your operations, often you think about just the operations of the organics program, but you also need to consider the operations of the collection program. You're adding another truck on the road, another crew, and impacts your fleet shop, just overall operations to your program overall, and not just focused on organics processing. And then the interest from your customers to participate, and what other steps will they need to do to participate. Some organics programs require the separation of your food scraps from your vegetative material. What steps will the customers need to do in order to participate? Will there be a fee? And how will that impact their likelihood to participate? So those are just some of the considerations to take into account when looking into the feasibility of an organics program, or even other diversion programs in your community.
Mark Bernstein, she kind of called you out there. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I do. Great, Veronica. Thank you so much. There are a number of problems. One is there a market for the compost if you do this? A lot of times there's so much compost and there's no market for it, right? And how do we begin to create markets for it? We're doing a study here now to see, is there a market for it in ag in Arizona? If you're going to come in and do a big anaerobic digester process and create, both from food and green waste, is there a market for it? Can you create a market? The other thing is from the, I think you're right, Veronica, from in particular, the space around sort of the restaurants and the cafeterias and the supermarkets, that's really open for great stuff. The problem is at the household level, and we ran a study with City of Phoenix at the household level on can we reduce food waste? And we had significant change in people's behavior, and the fact that they saved money every month because they were buying less food. And so I think, when it comes to food waste at the residential sector, we spend more effort reducing it, and then creating opportunities for other things to happen with the commercial sector to really engage and reuse and figure out the best and highest use for that food waste.
Great, thanks, Mark. Mark Spafford, we have a question that has come into our chat pod from Adina Rivas. The question is, Do your city residents pay a waste and recycling fee that helps pay for the programs and for new pilot programs, or do you rely on grant funding on new programming?
Yeah, we're probably like a lot of the folks that are out there on this call. We are a enterprise funded activity here at the municipality, so all of our programs are funded through our user fees. And so we don't necessarily have, we actually offer grants. We don't get any grants from any other types of agencies, or we're not actively applying for any grants just because we make enough revenue and have enough budget authority to be able to develop these programs kind of using our own resources. And we really haven't had to expand our employee base other than just expanding our fleet to actually do some of these different programs that we've been developing. And so we're kind of lucky. We've just been able to kind of prioritize what our resources have been within a department to be able to offer some of these pilots and do some of these programs that we've developed and that our customers have been asking for and the community has been asking for.
Thanks, Mark. And we have another question for you, so we'll keep you on the line here. Have you used any alternative daily covers in your typical operations at your landfill?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. We've, I think when we started there, we had a waste to cover ratio of sub-1, and since we started to use alternative daily covers and different things to cover the waste at our landfill, we've pushed that up at times to above 2.5, which I'm very proud of. But as far as alternative daily cover at the landfill, we have a wood lot that we use where we segregate out wood lot, once a year. Right before winter hits up here, we grind all that up, and so we're able to use all of that material as alternative daily cover. Also, every once in a while, we use snow if there's enough snow, which is kind of it's good because we reduce the amount of dirt that we're using, but sometimes it can cause a little bit of issues with leachate production, which I'm sure other folks out there that are have landfills are struggling with leachate production, minimization of it, and what to do with it. We also use alternative daily cover that's produced from a local recycling entity. So we basically use the residual from that construction and demolition debris recycling facility as alternative daily cover. And we've also recently, for the last couple of years, been using deployable tarps, which, we were kind of scared at first that the operators wouldn't like them. And, there was kind of hemming and hawing at first from the operators, but it turns out that they love them. But unfortunately, because the tarps are plastic and, every once in a while fires happen at a landfill, and of course fires at a landfill are bad. But we've had a couple of those different sections of tarp that we've had just because we've had fires that occurred after hours, have set the tarps on fire, unfortunately. But we haven't had anything major, but we've had to order a couple new tarps. But for any of you that are evaluating, that are owner-operators, about whether or not your operators will enjoy tarps, I can say from firsthand experience that our operators appreciate them, they love them, and think it's a lot easier to work with those than it is hauling dirt all the time. So yeah, we try to use alternative daily covers as much as possible.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And we have another one for you. So we'll keep you on the line for another one. How have you made recycling glass successful?
I'm not quite sure if, okay, so it's kind of like organics, right? It was, during our customer surveys, it was kind of the #1 thing that customers and residents here in the community wanted, was, just a way to recycle more of their glass. And so basically what we did is we did the same thing like I just said before, is we just reallocated our resources to make it a priority for us to go out and collect glass from local businesses, as well as, the residential curbside pilot that we're developing right now. But to make it a success, we basically had to do, just like with a lot of recycling, we had to do a lot of education and a lot of marketing to local businesses to let them know that this program was available, and basically try to talk them into, participating in our glass recycling program. And so a lot of it, kind of like a model that we use here is kind of like the Netflix model, whereas we offer we offer basically like the first 3 to 6 months of the service for free. If they liked it, they were able to keep the service, and we basically charge them a nominal fee to continue collecting that glass. And that's been one technique that's been pretty successful with us as far as developing commercial customers in recycling, as well as just improving organics recycling around the community.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And the next question is for Veronica. Veronica, can you discuss the benefits and drawbacks of automated collection of recyclable materials?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, interesting, we typically think of the benefits from automated collection are the decrease in workers' comp and limiting the materials that could be sent out, and also the aesthetics. Another one in thinking about this question was the impact to the cost. For some program, we will see a cost reduction by implementing automated collection as to the cost of the collection service, just because the seconds per stop will go down if previously you were collecting a lot of bags and a lot of material beyond a move outs and just no limits to the set outs. But a drawback that could be is that can be viewed as reducing the level of service by going to automated, because now individuals are confined to what is collected within the cart. Also, if you're going from manual to fully, there is a potential that it could be less efficient. So that's why I said prior, the cost aspect, we really recommend in considering going to automated collection that we do an operational study, and that we're going out there to see the seconds per stop, the number of households served, and then we in our proprietary model, we will then do a scenario of you going automated. Cost shouldn't be the only factor to determining whether you go from a manual or semi-automated to a fully automated system, because as mentioned, other benefits are reductions in worker comp, improved aesthetics, retention of staff, and we also need to take into consideration the safety of our employees, especially during this COVID pandemic. We're seeing communities now considering more so automated collection just to provide that protection to their employees.
Veronica, thank you. Mark Rogoff, did you have something to add?
Well, there are obviously a lot of advantages to automated collection. I've done these studies all across the United States, and I happen to agree. Yes, it does assist in the safety and the potential safety. But the downside really is the amount of contamination that you see in these programs. There's a tremendous amount of literally garbage that is thrown out in these automated recycling programs. So that's a downside. Obviously, you can mitigate some of the problems with a really active education programs. But if you really look at the materials coming out of these systems and you see where it's deposited at the tipping floor for the MRFs, there's the whole host of contaminants. So it is kind of depressing. You help implement a program, and the people really don't actively look at all the education programs to tell them what materials really shouldn't be thrown out in that 64-gallon can.
And just to add on to that, I think sometimes the type of program and your automated versus manual system, from a recycling perspective, is really driven by your recycling facility. Is your recycling facility equipped to handle single stream? Have they invested in that equipment and technology? So therefore, you're going to pay the cost of bringing them single stream material, and they can bring it up to those quality level, versus is your processing facility set up for source separated or dual stream or other type of separation scheme.
Mark Spafford, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, yeah, just from a kind of an operational standpoint, and, of course, safety is, our top priority. I mean, I can say, emphatically that the number of shoulder injuries went from, and workman's comp costs went from, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to basically zero after we switched to automated side loaders. And additionally, through attrition, we were also able to eliminate a lot of the swampers, and people hanging off the back of the truck that just weren't needed anymore because, we needed just one operator through, automated side loaders and didn't need people throwing garbage anymore. And keeping people in the truck is kind of like what I always preach, because the less people get out, the less opportunity, obviously, there is for them to get run over, which is what we don't want. And it's also, what it's also done for us is it's allowed us to, do some of those different recycling programs and expand the level of service that we provide to the community without necessarily, having to staff up because of the efficiencies that are provided by doing, automated side loaders, whether it's, collecting glass or collecting organics or collecting recycling or, regular old garbage. So yeah, from a safety standpoint, it's the way to go.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Mark Bernstein, we have a question for you. From China's important ban to the current situation we're in, is causing us to rethink our approach to waste management, recycling, and more. Some are talking seriously about a more distributed or micro approach. Where do you see this heading in the next few years, and how can it work?
So, yeah, I see us, as we've talked about before, this regional local approach, where we're creating solutions, ideas locally that are appropriate for the local community, right? There is not a one-size-fits-all to waste management, and different communities have different needs, whether you're Anchorage or Phoenix or wherever you are. The opportunity to create new innovations and new ideas locally to match local needs is where I think we're headed. It gives you more local control, and it gives you more opportunities to engage ideas. I'm a technology optimist. I've been doing clean tech technology for 30 years, from energy to agriculture to waste. And I keep seeing new bottoms-up approaches, ideas, concepts that can really create opportunities. So I think China's ban really provided us a great way to achieve new things, just like the oil embargoes of the 1970s spurred us to energy efficiency, right? It actually created economic activity, actually created new technologies, and I think the same thing here. And we can work together, collaborate, cooperate, trade ideas, but make it local, make it what you need for when you need, and I believe the resources are there to make that happen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark Bernstein. I think we have time for one more question. And Mark Rogoff, this one is directed at you. What kind of impacts do you see from the COVID-19 pandemic on waste to energy technology implementation in the United States?
Well, this kind of follows on the whole issue of the Chinese import ban and how it really impacts the economics of recycling in the United States. And now we have the next wave of COVID-19 and its impact on local governments, on corporations. I've seen over the last, say, 3 months or so, a lot of corporations, fast food, large chains that we were talking to about doing organic recycling, shying away from that because they're really looking at their bottom line. They're saying whether or not that they're going to be active. What is the economy going to be in 3 to 6 months or by the end of the year? So I've seen a number of these, feasibility studies or at least implementation efforts being put on hold. The other issue is the negotiations with the MRF operators. We'll read a number of communities that we've been dealing with that had to go back and renegotiate their contract, or the contract was expired or near to be expired. It's made it much more difficult because the the business deal offered by the MRF operators is less advantageous and more potentially risky for the community. We've actually had one or two communities that, for some of our clients, actually entertain the feasibility of actually taking over MRF operations. So literally deprivatizing the operations. So that's still in the works. And it's really just dealing with the whole issue of the economics. How is this all going to fit? Local governments with tax revenues declining, I think they're going to be really hard pressed to really kind of going full bore into recycling. We've seen cities like New York that are considering reducing their curbside organics collection program. So it's hard to know, what the economy and how it's really going to impact. But I've seen a couple of kind of negative changes over the last couple of months.
Very good. Thank you to everybody on the panel today. Mark Spafford, Mark Rogoff, Mark Bernstein, and Veronica. Thank you all for your experience and sharing your expertise with us. That's all the time we have for today. This is Matt Harper, and it's been a pleasure moderating this program for you today. Please remember to register for the next program in this series titled Talking Top Tech 3D Technologies Edition, scheduled for Thursday, August 6th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific Time. Also, please don't forget to fill out the evaluation form. The link to the survey will be emailed after the program today. Please note, due to the free format of this program, it is not eligible for CEUs. A recording of today's program will be available in the APWA Members Library in YouTube in a couple of weeks. APWA members can log into the library to access past CLLs, Talking Top Techs, and conference content free of charge. Not an APWA member? Take the Members Library for a free test drive. Spend 2 weeks accessing all materials in our Members Library for free. Look for the link to sign up in your email today after the program. Thank you for your attendance and participating in this program, and have a great day.